project, we're going to create a sticky inelastic collision between two wooden blocks. Our goal is going to be to find the initial velocity of block 1 right before it hits block 2. This could represent a car crash, and police can use this physics to determine the initial speed of a car right before impact. An inelastic collision is a collision when two objects collide with each other and they stick together. In our example, we will push block 1 with initial velocity, and it will collide with block 2 at the center of mass, so there's no rotation. They will stick together and they will go for some distance. We are going to use conservation of momentum in order to solve this problem. This is the equation for an inelastic collision. M2 is not moving, so it is going to be 0. So our new equation is M1 V1 equals M1 plus M2 V final. Both of the masses are the same, so this now simplifies into M V initial equals 2M V final. The M's can cancel out, so now our new equation is the initial velocity of the first block is equal to 2 times the final velocity of the two-block system. Now we will solve for the final velocity. We are now going to use kinematics and Newton's second law in order to solve for the final velocity. The initial velocity in this equation is the same thing as the final velocity here because we are solving for the initial velocity of the two blocks right after they collide with each other. So our final velocity is 0, and this is our new equation. We now need to solve for acceleration, so we will use Newton's second law. The only force acting on two blocks is force of friction, which is negative since it's opposing motion. So friction is U sub k times mass times gravity equals ma, and the two masses cancel out. So now we have U sub k equals U sub a times g equals acceleration. So now we need to solve for v naught. So v naught is equal to the square root of 2ax. We plug in our a, so the equation now becomes 2 times u sub k times g times x. So we looked up online the coefficient of friction between two pieces of dry wood, and it came out to be 0.35. Our gravity is 9.8 meters per second, and the distance that the two blocks travel is 0.13 meters. So when we plug them into the equation, we get 2 times 0.35 times 9.81 meters per second squared times 0.13 meters. This all simplifies to 0.94 meters per second, which would be the final velocity here. Now we have solved for the velocity of the two blocks right after the collision. You can plug that into this equation to find the initial velocity of the first block right before the collision. So the initial velocity of the first block will equal 1.88 meters per second. And this initial velocity is useful for cops because they can determine if a car is speeding before they collide with another car. The next video we're about to show is a more realistic example of what a car crash should look like when two cars are both moving. This collision is a little bit different than our collision, as both objects are moving with initial velocity. Object 1 and object 2 are both moving, so when they collide they'll move at an angle, with both of them being connected to each other. You can also use conservation of momentum with this collision as well as many others.
There are two main types of collisions. We focus mainly on inelastic collisions, where the two objects collided and stuck together and had a velocity after the collision. This was shown with our wooden block crash, a car crash example, and it could also be shown by a bullet impacting a solid object and sticking together in that. We will now talk about elastic collisions, and we will show you an example of that in this next video. As you just saw in that example with the soccer ball, an elastic collision is a collision where two objects strike each other but do not stick together. Therefore, they will have two different final velocities. A soccer ball is an excellent example of that, where it is kicked and goes flying where the person does not. You can also see elastic collisions in the game of pool or billiards, where two balls are hit together to send another one flying towards a desired pocket. Elastic collisions are very common in real life and are really fucking awesome.